It is I, Tempest Naravan Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It is time to continue our discussion of the 5th edition of Dungeons & Dragons, 5th Ed D&D. Where we last left off, we began talking about creating your own adventure. We're diving deeper into that today. Let's start by talking about an important factor: published adventures. Now the thing is, we've talked about this part in here. You can make your own adventure, but published adventures are an important tool that you might want to use. You can use these to craft your own worlds. You can use them as your world. Granted, you could always change up the pace, make something on your own, but these are an important tool you can use. And I'm going to explain why it's such an important. It provides scenarios, maps, NPCs, monsters, and treasures that your characters can interact with in a scenario, as I said, that fits it. It has its own background. It has all this information. But you can alter it to fit whatever kind of campaign you're fitting this adventure in, or appropriate to what your players would like to have. Because we've already sort of talked about what your players might enjoy. Now it's sort of, you can take this adventure and appropriately alter it to fit in with the kind of adventure your characters are looking for. You could change a villain entirely if you have a villain from another adventure that fits better. Or you could change the background if you're trying to add this into a campaign you're already building up so it fits along with it. These adventures don't account for everything. The point of them is to make it easier for you. So when you're focusing on your preparation for the game, you're focusing on more the story and the plot. Trying to craft that in an appropriate way which you feel fits along with the adventure you've already been building and your characters. The point of these is also to be an inspiration to you. That's what it is, to inspire you. You're encouraged to alter and affect these, to change them in appropriate ways that you feel like you want them to be. If you come up with an awesome idea for something that you would think would be appropriate, an encounter, a treasure, a monster, a new NPC, even another place to explore that you want to map out that you think, oh, this little location mentioned on my map here as part of this adventure, maybe I want my characters to explore it. I can come up with it. That is why published adventures can be very important to you. Now, regardless if you're publishing or making on your own, you want your adventure to effectively mimic a story. It should have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Each portion of it should make it flow like a great story. The beginning of it should draw your characters in. It should excite them. It should make them interested in what's going on. It make them wonder what's going on. It should give them a general plot in which to follow, plot they would want to follow. Something occurs. Maybe they're attacked by this enemy, and they're like, we should find out what's going on. Why were we attacked? We're drawn into the situation. We're anticipating in the next session so that we can learn more about what's going on. This plot that has been introduced to us that we're being drawn into. They're being drawn into the story. Now the middle part of this is going to be the bulk of your adventure, the bulk of your campaign. This is where the majority of decisions and events that your characters are going to encounter will happen. The decisions and things that your characters have done should have an effect on the overall plot of it. It should have an effect on the end of the story, and it should reflect that the very actions your characters are doing are altering the path that they would be going on. The conclusion should reflect everything they do. Now, along the path, they could learn more information, new secrets, which could either give them new kind of missions, new kind of goals in which to follow after, or change that original goal that they got at the beginning. When they hit that story, that plot, they got a goal to do. That goal that happened original, like investigate this person that attacked me. They might get to a point where they learn something about him that changes that goal, or they might add a secondary goal, that they have two goals they're trying to finish now. Their perception of that goal could change too. Maybe they were attacked for some kind of reason that they wouldn't expect, and because of that reason, the goal doesn't make as much sense anymore. They still want to defeat that person, but it's now a completely different reason behind doing it. Perhaps they attacked them because someone was trying to use one of them had influence in a kingdom, trying to get rid of them. That's going to change things that are going on. Little things like that change their perception could be could help drive a story forward. The fact is, you also have to remember, regardless of what the players are doing, your antagonists in this story will be doing similar things. They'll have their own goals, own missions, own actions that they'll be doing altering the plot. And you should keep track of what they're doing on the side. As long as they're not having a direct encounter, you can sort of get an idea of the direct outcome, but you should judge it on what your characters are doing to sort of figure out the rivalry of the antagonist, to sort of move towards the end of whatever's going on here. But you always have to remember your players are the central figures. They're the heroes of the story, the main characters. You should never have a scene which they're just observing it. They should always influence a scene. Even if it's something small, they should be able to influence that scene, and it should be something that they can have a tangible effect on. It's not just something that they're sort of pounding their head against a wall with. The ending, of course, is the climax of the story, climax of the plot, climax of everything. It should be an action-packed, eventful scene where the players should be on the edge of their seats and they shouldn't know if their characters are going to live or die. It should be the resolution of everything going on, and it should reflect all the decisions the players have been making up until now throughout the adventure. Everything they have done and decided is hinging on this one final act that your characters are throwing themselves into. This does not necessarily mean you want to tie up every loose end. If you had storylines that were going on throughout the plot and you didn't tie one up, maybe that's an opening for another adventure. You could always have them. Maybe one of the villain's minions that you had rivalry with, that you battled with a couple of times, got away. What will happen to them? Will they come back to get you? You've managed to kill and defeat the villain, but they got away. Maybe they'll rebuild the organization, send it out against you again in some other adventure. As you can see, these little points can be openings for new adventures to take your characters into the next one. Now let's begin to talk about, of course, your general adventure setting. General parts of that setting which are very important to determine. There are going to be a couple of types of general adventures you're going to go on, location and event-based. Let's dive into the location-based right now. Location-based means I'm going to be in a certain location, either a dungeon or some kind of wilderness, that my adventure is going to focus around this area, and many of the quest lines, events, and goals that I have are related to whatever is going on here. Now, the book provides a couple of steps that you might want to follow in order to build one of these areas. It provides a number of tables with suggestions for each of these different sort of steps in the building of one of these areas. You can take these steps in any orders. You can either just choose one from one of these charts. You could roll it if you want a little bit of random flair to whatever's going on. Regardless, you could use it more for inspiration. Like if I'm rolling, I could roll a number, see what it is, and use that as for inspiration for another aspect of this dungeon I'm building, or this wilderness area I'm building. Then I'm using a little bit of random nature to help formulate my ideas. Again, you could also choose one if you feel like you find one appropriate, or using them as an example, you could come up with one on your own. So the first step, of course, is figuring out the goals of your characters when it comes to whatever area they're in. Of course, we have dungeons, which are just as it sounds like, usually some kind of underground area people are exploring. It has wilderness, which has its exploring an outdoor area. There is also a chart in the book that provides for any kind of area that doesn't fit these two. It's not a wilderness, not a dungeon, it's some kind of other area. It gives an example of 20 goals for each of this. So you can roll a d20, you can choose one, or again, you can use them as an example to figure out what kind of goal your characters are going to be to exploring this location that you've come up with, or you're beginning to come up with. Second thing they recommend. This is an important one. Villains, allies, and patrons. This gives some general suggestions on the types of villainous characters, the villainous NPCs your characters might encounter, allies that might come to your player's aid during the portion of the quest, and a patron, whoever is beginning to give them this quest, or was the originator of this quest going to your characters, whether directly giving them the quest or having an influence in causing the beginning of it. Getting these sort of important characters, whether you have other NPCs, helps to solidify your character's adventure a little bit too, because you know kind of what an antagonist is. You know who might have been helping them. You know if they have any kind of allies that they might find to assist them in the course of the adventure. The last step I want to talk about today is, of course, fleshing out the location. I have some basic goals of the location, information about the location. There's an entire other chapter that I will get to in a future episode that gives details on building out a location, whether wilderness or dungeons. Effectively, you're going to use that information now to build the area you're going to be using. We're not talking about it now because this is really the adventure building, not the dungeon building section that we're talking about. So I will talk about the future though, but no, we build our dungeon at this point in time. Craft whatever we feel is appropriate and need to it. So that's it for today. I first talked about using pre-made adventures, just to give you an idea of why you might want to do it. Before I talked about the storyteller you're going to use as part of your adventure. The beginning, middle, and end of your adventure and how you should craft it in order to draw your characters in and make them excited about the adventure. Then I moved into a little bit of the settings that you're building up, the locations that we're talking about, that you're going to be using with your adventures. The two types of adventures that you're going to have, event-based and location-based. And of course, I dove into location-based first. Now I haven't completed location-based. We're going to finish that up in the next episode and move on to the event-based adventures and talk about those and how you can craft them for your campaigns. So, if you have any questions, comments, anything you would say, anything you think I left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. It shows support the channel, the Empire, the work I do. If you want to show some extra support, you can always check out my Patreon, link description below. But regardless, until the next time, I bid you farewell.